So a couple of questions. What do you think would be a good way, since the military child goes through so many changes, to kind of add some kind of a constant in the schools? So that way, no matter where they go, they have something to rely on. What could that constant be, and what could this program kind of help create that constant?
Well, I think it's a great question, but I'm going to deconstruct it and go backwards a little bit. I think, first of all, there needs to be an open acknowledgement that schools play a very important role in the transition. We just have to start there. I think some schools may not realize they have a large number of kids transitioning, not only from military families, by the way, it could be from other inner city schools have the same issue. Schools can't really function well or serve their population unless they first acknowledge that. They have to say, we have half of our kids, or all of our kids, or 75% of our kids. Once they realize that, the next question comes, what are the things that we could do to make their entry? And I think the first question is, what happens when they first walk in the door, that first moment? Who meets them? What do they say? Who talks to their parents? What do they say? And I think there's a lot of interesting ways that now that we're doing this research project, we're going around the country, we're hearing from the various districts, people have invented ways on their own that we should learn from first. One approach, for example, some schools have trained some teachers and transition officers so that every kid coming from a military place around the world has somebody who's trained, that meets them, that greets them first of all, talks to them about what they just went through, all the various different places, connects them with friends that are in the school, connects their parents with the school organization, connects with resources right off on the first day, goes to the teachers in each of the classes and kind of gives a background and history so the kid doesn't feel like they're lost, making sure that the child is not too far behind in certain subjects because of the transition, which is really common because in every transition there's an adjustment period, and seeing if there's any other kinds of supports that the kid may need, either psychologically or spiritually or just socially in terms of just knowing where to hang out, those kinds of things. So some of the places are training one or two individuals and literally coming up with a process to do that. Other places are looking at ways to create kind of a normative welcoming environment so that they celebrate holidays like military. Marine's birthday is coming up soon. One of our students right now is doing an entire school celebration. It's only going to be part of school now. What a great idea of sending a message to all those kids and families that this is a welcoming, caring, this is part of. Other schools are looking at curricular issues, like including material in the literature part, even if it's an AP literature class that deals with transitions, that deals with military families, so that almost like in a cultural centric way, like you would in an Afrocentric school or in a Jewish day school or whatever, to make the school send a message to the kids and the families, we understand who you are, what your background and what your culture is, and we accept you and we honor you and what your family does. So that's not a transition counselor, but that's a very clear kind of cultural message. I could give you other examples. Temecula, for example, one of their schools has a hall of honor that during recess and during meetings, kids actually during recess come in and they have all the pictures of the families where their parents are at. Teachers have meetings in those rooms. It sends a very strong message to not only the military families, but to the civilian families that there are people giving great sacrifices to our country, coming into our space here, and we are sending a public message to them as a community that we honor them, we welcome them, and we're here to support them. In some ways, those normative kinds of messages are just as strong in the transition as these kind of more technical, getting all the right information. There's probably many, many, many more ideas, and that's part of our project. We want to explore. We're finding that particularly principals and teachers and counselors that have had military backgrounds, either they're military dependents, they have spouses, or they've been to war themselves and come back, are definitely driving the cadre of wonderful ideas that people are thinking in terms of accepting civilian culture, understanding and accepting children and families from military cultures. Those are just some of the examples. If you want me to go a little bit more into detail, I think there's differences between preschool, elementary school, and high school in particular. I didn't leave out middle school on purpose. I could get to that. The high school is probably the most critical, I think, because at that point people have moved already a lot, kids and families. The issue of credits, graduation, college, falling behind, AP courses. If it hasn't been attended to very carefully up until that point, it could be an extremely stressful time for kids and families, and a lot of resources are needed in that area. The Interstate Compact is one of the good ideas, but I think additional training for teachers and principals and peer groups on how to help students in those is particularly important because of the critical point of development. In elementary school, I think there's opportunities to make sure kids don't fall way behind. And there's a whole set of strategies in the early transition when they come in there. I also think that in addition to the entry and stability, if the school could send messages to through their schedule around deployment, around re-entry schedules, around they don't conflict, simple things like they don't conflict with tests, so that parents and kids could talk to each other, so that if certain kids are upset around deployments or around re-entry or around issues, there's a whole group of people that understand and that actually accommodate to them. So working with the school schedule, those are examples.